This week on the 77% Street Debate.
They just want to close the chapter, saying it's a final deal to who?
The German communities has benefited somehow with this atrocity that it has happened. Today, they own this land that was taken for us.
Why are we the ones to be suffering if we are in or on our land?
The people who came here, none of them stole any land. These farms were bought legally.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the 77%. Now, in May of 2021, both the German and Namibian governments finally struck a deal on what to do about atrocities committed in this country by the former colonial power. Key among those discussions was what to do about the descendants of the genocide that unfolded right here in Okakarara. Now that that agreement has been made public, there are those who say it's time to move on, and there are those who say it's still not enough. The question we're asking today is it really possible to pay for atrocities committed in the past? And the people here today are going to help me answer that question. And we'll begin with Eleni, because I think it's important for us to get an overview of the history. Why is this so important and why is it relevant now?
In 1904, the Germans has waged war against the communities in Namibia, and this was ordered by the author of Lothar van Trotha. By Otter ordered his troops to eradicate all the Herero speaking people. Then he has included the words like, if you see a woman or a child, you must make sure that they are eliminated. He repeated this 1904 with another community of the Nama community within Namibia, and the intention was intentional that these people has to be eradicated, just like it has happened with the Hereros in 1904. As a result, we have lost wealth, we have lost land, and the German government and the German communities has benefited somehow with this atrocity that it has happened. Today, they own this land that was taken for us. Today, they sit on the wealth that, as a result, we have lost.
So serious consequences that you say are still being felt today.
Yes.
Let's come to Sherman, who's a journalist here. I just want to understand, I mean, when you read the history text and you hear what happened, it's obviously very brutal, but certainly not unique in these parts of Africa. But why is it only being discussed now?
It's always been there. Nobody has always spoken about it back in the day until in 2006 when a former Herero leader, but also he was part of the parliament, Rirwako, who spoke about, who tabled a motion in parliament sort of to have Germany speak to admit that it was a genocide, what had happened then, and then to speak to reparations, and then of course ask forgiveness. So
obviously Germany taking the unprecedented move to not just accept that this happened, but to also offer an apology. So Sherman, another Sherman, somebody might be listening to this from another part of Africa and say, hey, Namibia and Germany have done the impossible, getting these two nations to sit on the table and reach some form of agreement. So why is it that we're hearing that it's not enough?
A lot of descendants from the Herero and the Nama side have still experienced that they still feel the apartheid, or they still feel the genocide still amongst us. We just want the Germans to acknowledge what happened and just take responsibility and accountability for what transpired, and just so that we can also find that closure that we seek.
Okay, so just to come back to your point, because you're saying that you want the Germans to accept responsibility and you want them to apologize.
Yes.
Haven't they done that as part of this agreement?
They basically say that, yes, something did happen. They don't really say that we did this, or my ancestors, not we, but my ancestors did this to your people, and we are sorry for that, and we just want us to now look at building a future together.
Let me come to V here, Viri now, because we're hearing that there's some long-term consequences of the genocide that unfolded 118 years ago. What are some of these consequences?
One of those is cultural loss that has been lost to our communities. You go up north, you find communities who embrace their cultural identity in terms of attire, in terms of food, in terms of cultural dances, go a little bit more central to the Herero community. If there is a cultural attire that they speak of, it's the uniform of the war of 1904. Nothing before that is presented as culture in terms of the Herero people, yes.
Let's go to Tsepo there, because he was actually one of the people whose family was forced out of Namibia because of the war, and he's recently just come back, but you were born in Botswana. So displacement of persons was also another consequence. Can you tell me about your family's experience?
Yes, indeed, we suffered a lot for the fact that we have to, my grandparents have to fit here to Botswana in order to save their lives. Since we came back to Namibia by 1993, by that time I was 2 years old, we still feel that much has not been done by the Germans. You run in a farm of a white man or a colonizer who claim to inherit the land from their parents, and you drive 30 kilometers around and square meters, you can name them. It's only for a family, but you will find Namibians, infected families who have been touched or affected by the genocide, living in a perimeter of 10 kilometers plot of land, maybe 30 homestead. We are getting poor every day. We are being affected, our lifestyles. Poverty is almost hunting us now.
Let's hear from Harry here, because he's one of the landowners, but also a third generation Namibian. So by all means, you are Namibian. So how does it feel to hear that the descendants of the Germans are the ones who took our land, and if it wasn't for this, then we'd be in a better place?
First of all, I think it's very important that we have this debate. It's a very important aspect to nation building. It's the other point that in terms of land, the people who came here, none of them stole any land. The people who came here bought the land under the laws of the government of the day. So the people who have bought land since independence have bought it under the current dispensation. People before that and the different dispensations that we had in the last 110 years established a framework of laws, and within these laws, these farms were bought legally. This is a commercial entity. This is something you buy, you sell, you inherit. I employ, about at least 40 people permanently and about 80 people in terms of, of charcoal. There are probably about 400 people living off this farm of ours, if you multiply it by families and that kind of thing. So, you say 30 kilometers driving and with one family, I'm sorry, sir. That is just not how commercial farming works.
Okay, I see you already have a response. Go for it.
I really want to respect the view of Harry on this.
Yeah.
But if you have to go back to the drawing point, how did the white communities acquire land in Namibia? Just because you are a soldier, you get a reward of the means of production, which is land. And then because you have it, you are able to let your generation inherit this. The law that is there was just mainly for the purpose of protecting those that had land.
Okay, my question to you is, because the Namibian government has been independent for a while now, over 30 years, why haven't these laws then been changed to reflect what you're saying? Because Harry inherited the land, he didn't ask for it.
We live in the world that has created the systems that make sure that they will protect the haves. That's the reality of the fact. You take the constitution,
So
there are chapters.
Are you saying that the government of Namibia and the constitution is designed to protect people like Harry?
Exactly, because if you talk of the constitution that has the chapters that cannot be touched and that cannot be amended, what do you think they are doing?
Yeah.
They are protecting those that has.
Let me come back to you, Harry, because we're hearing that the laws are designed to protect people like you, and that actually it would be nice if you could perhaps share your wealth. How do you feel about that?
Share my wealth.
Yeah, donate, I've heard people say.
Land is not something that makes you rich. Land is something that you can utilize in order to make money. Very few people do actually manage to get rich of land. The other point that I'd like to make is, the land that can be utilized in such a way that it actually does get you financially stable is available on the free market. The issue of land is not equal to financial wealth.
Right. But I'm now coming to you, Lorraine, because you're a youth member of this community, highly affected. Do you think that the problems that this community is facing really do stem from 118 years ago, or is it your government just not stepping up to the plate?
Our government has nothing to do with it, because if what happened didn't happen, then our government should be blamed for it. I believe that everything has to do with the past, and if the past is actually recognized and put into place, I think that the government won't have to be blamed for anything then.
All right, let me come back to you, Viri, now, because I keep hearing that, you're not satisfied. Very simply, what do you want?
The amount that was offered is not enough, simply because we are talking of land that needs to be reclaimed. We are talking of, for example, a region like Comas, or what happened to the people that lived there before the Germans settled in Windhoek. Yeah. Once you get land for these people, then you can talk about agriculture for them, you can talk about a future for them, you can talk about training for them, because they have actually where they can say this is home.
So you get back huge tracts of land, and there's some form of development in this area. Does that solve the problem?
Partly yes, because I believe land is the basis of life. So once you have people have land, then they can generate wealth. I totally believe that.
So you're making it sound like there's absolutely no land available in this country for the indigenous people. But what Harry said is true, that there is land available for sale. There are farms that are available. There's communal property that is perhaps even idle. So how will acquiring more land change the situation? That's what I'm trying to understand.
How does one without any money, a poor family of generational workers, so to say, how do they purchase land? The figures are saying it's one of the most expensive in the world, not just in Africa, in the world. So you are telling me that the affected communities must purchase one of the most expensive assets in the world. Mm-hmm. How do they do that? It's virtually impossible.
All right. And let me come to Va here, because you live in this area, and I just want to hear from you, historically in your family, what do people do to earn a living? Do they work on the farms? What do they do to earn their keep?
To start off, Waterberg Guest Farm is a farm in our district, but we have literally no land that is available for us. We live there as people under or managed by the whites. Every day waking up and to see that people are suffering in my area where everything actually happened, I still come back and think, why is our people suffering, or why are we the ones to be suffering if we are in or on our land? Owning land, as Virina said, it will make a better future for us, or it will advance our living standards. We get land, we get farms where we can start up businesses, and our youth or our young ones can create a better future for themselves.
Okay. So Charmaine, I want to come to you. If land is indeed bought and sold to Namibians, how will it change the situation? I keep coming back to this question because there's a lot of rural to urban migration right now. Who is going to take care of this land?
If you look at places where a lot of Herero people or even Nama people live, for instance, you'll see it's barren land, it's dry. If you come to the other side of, let's say, Namibia, where the land that is predominantly white-owned and also to some point like more German, the land is fertile and they can be able to create wealth from that. Herero people will still remain suffering unless really they scrape off the deal, like a lot of experts have said, and then just start, for instance, Germany, even if they speak of reconstruction and reconciliation, for instance, how will this money or these funds even be used to buy farms for the affected communities?
Yeah, by the way, I want to make it very clear that the German government has been careful not to call this fund reparations, but rather what she said, reconciliation and reconstruction program. So you're nodding very much here, Eleni. Do you have something to say to me? Because I imagine that education is really important. We saw what happened in Zimbabwe when land was forcefully taken from the white settlers there. There were problems of food security, not to mention flare-ups of racial tension. Yes. We don't want to see a repeat of that, surely.
We do not want to see the repeat of that. That's why we have adopted that constitution of us, as much as I see it as being skewed and protecting them more than the affected community. We love that constitution. But how do we live within this? How do we realize that what we are currently owning has come as a result of the suffering of the current people.
All right. Let me come to you, Sherman, because I think we've exhausted the issue of land. But isn't it more useful to spend this money on development? Because 1 billion is not a small amount of money. Yeah.
No, most definitely.
You think it's small?
Yes. With that said, I definitely agree in that regard, because I as well thought, like, why can't there be an agreement of where, you know, the descendants of Herero and Nama people are given grants to go study, whether it's in Germany or any other country or within Namibia itself as well. We can educate the descendants in order for them to have a brighter future, because that is the aim. We want them to have a brighter future. We want them to do better than what happened with their ancestors.
Right. Let me come back to Lorraine here, because earlier you said that your government should not be blamed for the events that unfolded 118 years ago, correct? There are consequences which we can't escape from. But again, I ask, you've lived in this area your whole life. It's poorly developed. What makes you think that another 1 billion, 2 billion, 20 billion will change that?
Let's see, regarding the money. Money is really not that much. To me, it feels like they're trying to run away from, they're exhausted. They just want to close the chapter. Saying it's a final deal to who? You know, these people are affected, and the money you're sending already, it's not enough. And you're trying to
what's
close.
Enough? What's enough?
Enough is when they realize that people need land. And as it is already, they want to close the chapter and they're giving money and all that. The fact that the people that are there already are afraid of losing it, and we want it as well.
All right, let me ask Harry, are you afraid of losing the land? Would you be willing to part with it, for example, if there was a willing buyer?
If there was a willing buyer and I wanted to sell, yes, I would sell the land. After all, it's a business, and land is a business. Land needs to be productive. Land needs to produce, create jobs. Commercial farming is indeed something that contributes to the national economy. That doesn't exclude, not at all, the communal side of things. And it's something where we, from a commercial side, are interested to listen. Where can we contribute in order to find a common future? And that is really what it's about. It's about the future, isn't it?
Let me hear from Eleni, because I saw him nodding rather vigorously while you were speaking. Is this because you're agreeing with his sentiments?
I do agree with the sentiment of having to craft the future together. And that's what we are saying. Let's not be framed and be put in the corner of how much is enough.
And the reason why I was asking this is, how do you quantify then? Loss of life, loss of culture, dispossession of land. How do you put a figure to this?
It's so difficult as it is that you can put a price on the life. But this will not take effect that loss of life, that loss of land, that loss of your humanity has put you in the current living standard there to have, and has benefited the other party. We are now saying, please realize this and see what you can do. And you have to be realistic in terms of how is it possible that a 1 billion that we claim would be enough? How will it alleviate this poverty? How will it uplift these communities that has lost that much for that long?
Eleni, a lot of people saying, the German government needs to do this, the German government needs to do that. But at some point you have to ask, where does the Namibian government come in?
In terms of genocide, there is one part that is responsible for that. And for sure, it's not the Namibian government. It's the German government. So our fight is that this should be recognized, the apology has to be tendered, and reparation has to be paid on this. So once that is achieved, then we can talk about the Namibian government on how are we going to make sure that these communities that has been affected are benefiting from what is owed to them, so that they can at least get uplifted from the current level of life they are living.
By the way, I think it's really important to mention that President Steinmeier from Germany was due to actually come to Namibia to present this document in front of the Namibian government for ratification. But because of COVID, that didn't happen. But this is obviously in the books. Okay, so we've spent a great deal of time looking at the past and looking at the land issues. But I want to ask a critical question. And I think I'll come back to you, Sherman. Is this a nod, to the rest of former colonial powers that it's time to step up and take responsibility? Could this be the precedent that we need?
I mean, it could have been if Germany stuck to the motion of 2006, where they had to acknowledge that it's a genocide, as opposed to Germany in the agreement saying it's a genocide in today's perspective. What is today's perspective? What does that mean? It's a genocide, not today's perspective. Reparations, pay the reparations. And I know they are scared. War indemnities, more other people or more other countries will come back to Germany and also hold it accountable for whatever atrocities they might have caused. And then we need the Chancellor, for instance. This is the call from the Herero and Nama people. And there is that division, it will always be there until we get to that point.
So for you, the little things matter.
Yes.
Language matters. The person who's sent to apologize matters.
Yes.
Okay, so Charmaine, the other Charmaine, where do we go from here? Because it took 6 years to get this deal alone. So do we need another 6 years?
If we take another 6 years, we will never reach an agreement. Terms can change and say no, but now we want this and this added as well.
Yeah,
so if
and
we
this
could
is
just
where I was asking, where does it stop?
Exactly.
What's
so
enough?
if we could just come to a conclusion or reach an agreement as we are currently and just take it from there, because we have to look at the future. We have to look at building something. We have to look at developing. We have to grow as a nation. Yeah. I feel that we need to look past it and just look forward to what the future holds for all of us.
Okay, let me speak to Varuka here, because earlier she was obviously very frustrated and you could tell that she's very, very angry, which is surprising because you're just 18. What will it take for you to be less angry, to not feel like, the children of Harry here are your enemies but your fellow Namibians?
I wouldn't be angry with Harry's children because he acknowledged the fact that he did something wrong. And yes, we are here to clear it
I find
up.
that interesting that you said Harry acknowledged his mistake. So you actually don't see any difference between Harry as a descendant of colonial power occupants and the actual colonizers?
I do, but Harry is one of the landowners in Namibia, as you stated earlier. And I acknowledge the fact that he's white or German?
He's Namibian.
Namibian.
Yeah.
Okay, he's Namibian, and I wouldn't mind or I wouldn't oppose anything that his children or he says, because he's Namibian now and he acknowledges the fact that he's done something wrong, he's offended somebody, and he's ready to, his fellow race Namibians, yes, are there to correct whatever it is that has been done 110
Varuka, I
years
really
ago.
appreciate you trying your best to be politically correct. So let me come to Harry here for a second, because obviously we've heard it, Va said it, we've heard another person say blacks, whites. Surely it must be painful to know that you're a member of this country and there's so much othering. How do we get past that?
In Namibia, it's always this language grouping compared to that one and blah, blah, blah. So, no, I am Namibian. I'm third generation Namibian. The farm Okozongomingo belongs to my family for the last 111 years. I have never lived in other country than in Namibia. I speak 4 languages, including the local one. I mean, not very well, but I mean, Matukondisa. And it's in our interest as Namibians to go ahead. At the end of the day, it is about the future together.
Okay, Tsepo, I'd like to hear your thoughts about the future. How do we make sure that we're able to move forward,
We need to move. We cannot stand for... From the past, we have been affected. Now, at the end, after 10 years from now, we are going to blame who? If the Germans have come on board and the agreement has been reached, that cost government a lot of money that could also help our lives here. So we need to move, support the agreement in place, and then just change the phrasing of the document itself and all those other technicalities that are seen in the draft declaration.
Okay, and finally, Viri now. Earlier you said that, look, this is not enough, but at some point these negotiations have to reach an end. So where do you see it ending?
Once we see that the Germans are really willing to accept and acknowledge that what happened was a genocide. It was not war crimes, it was not acts of inhumane torture or whatever, it was a genocide. And it was a genocide in 1904, and it's still a genocide in today's terms.
So going back to what
what Sherman
Sherman was saying.
Yes. Other than that, aside from the money, which is not enough, I think the issue of culture has rarely been touched on. And
loss of culture.
Because culture is identity. Culture is self-pride. Culture is self-dignity. Why do I have to wear Lothar von Trotter's attire to recognize myself as a Herero? Surely there was something that we lost somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
How do we reclaim that?
Well, I think that's a very difficult question and one that requires a whole other debate on returning stolen artworks.
Yes.
But I think this is a good place to end. And I wanted to just draw from this agreement, which, by the way, is a 6-page document. I encourage all of you to look at it. And this is how I want to conclude. It's not possible to undo what has been done, but the suffering, inhumanity, and pain inflicted on the tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children by Germany during the war in what is today Namibia must not be forgotten. It must serve as a warning against racism and genocide. Thank you for watching.